Dzień dobry, panie ministrze. To jest nasz pierwszy Q&A, taki online, który przeprowadzamy dla państwa. Także od razu z góry przepraszamy za wszelkie kłopoty techniczne i niewłączone mikrofony. Mam nadzieję, że się uda. Przede wszystkim mogą państwo zadawać pytania, to jest bardzo ważny element. Państwo nas słyszą, mam nadzieję. My państwa nie słyszymy, więc jedyny sposób na zadawanie pytań to jest poprzez takie okienko Q&A, które się powinno w państwa bodaj prawym dolnym rogu pokazywać. Nasze spotkanie będzie tutaj nagrywane i jest też transmitowane później na YouTubie. Mogą je państwo sobie odtworzyć. Z racji tego, że w tego typu eventach jak dzisiejszy przede wszystkim chcemy położyć nacisk na interakcję i dużo trudniej jest robić tłumaczenia symultaniczne, tak jak robimy to na dole, zdecydowaliśmy się na taką zmianę, że jeden Q&A będzie po angielsku, po to tak, żeby nasi anglojęzyczni czytelnicy mogli w nim uczestniczyć, a kolejne Q&A będą na zmianę po polsku, po angielsku robione. Także dzisiejszy Q&A, dlatego że temat jest nie tylko polski, ale moim zdaniem bardzo europejski, ważny także dla wszystkich przedstawicieli międzynarodowych. Dzisiejszy Q&A będzie prowadzony po angielsku, dlatego już w tej chwili przełączam się na język angielski. Natomiast państwo mogą zadawać pytania zarówno po polsku, jak i po angielsku. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let's welcome. Now, as I switch to English, because today Q&A session will be in English. With us is the Minister of Finance, Tadeusz Kościński. You have to... Welcome once again. Now in English, you have the ability to ask questions through the Q&A box that should be in your bottom right corner of the screen. Of course, we received plenty of questions from you during the last couple of days because you had that possibility already. Unfortunately, I'm not able to ask every question that I received, so I will try to bundle them and ask the minister what you are willing to know. And there are plenty of questions, so I will not postpone the Q&A session. And let's start. We'll divide the Q&A session into two parts. The first one will be when I will be asking questions directly from Polityka Insight, and then I will ask the questions that came to us either through the Q&A panel or through our emails a couple of days till now. So, Minister, I have the first question. I think that's the most important question. How are you today?
Very well, thank you very much. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the bring a bottle party now.
Yeah, the new meaning of a bottle party, exactly. Great to hear that you are fine in times of a pandemic. That's very good to know. And how do you feel about the economy?
Very interested to see how it pans out because nobody knows. You're probably going to ask me about what I think about the GDP in this year. Well, I think Donald Rumsfeld said that there's two types of economic forecasters. There's the forecasters that don't know, and there's the forecasters that don't know that they don't know. And only those two. And I think actually economic forecasting has only got one useful purpose at this moment, is to make astrology respectable, because there's every forecast at the moment is based on total unknowns. We're in totally unknown territory. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Nobody knows how long this pandemic is going to happen, going to continue. We don't know what the consequences are, because even just on the health issues, no one's really that 100% certain that the pandemic will come once and disappear, whether it will come again.
That's right.
We don't know what the consequences are at this stage. People become ill and they become healthy. But in the long term, is that going to stay like that, or is it going to come back in a few years' time that there is some sort of damage being made to human tissue? So we really don't know. So it's for what it's worth. I think at the moment the Polish economy obviously is in total lockdown. We really don't know. When you lock something down, you don't know how much damage is being caused and how much is just being frozen, and in due time we thaw it and it springs back and lives again. So we really don't know. Of course, logically thinking, the longer it takes for the lockdown, the more damage is going to be made. So if we lock down for another week or so, which I doubt, but if that was the case, then I think we could probably quite quickly rebound. So possibly a recession in this quarter, but not for the whole year. But I think the consensus I'm beginning to hear, and again, just because 10 people repeat it doesn't mean it's true, but the consensus seems to be that for every month of lockdown, we can take 2% off the GDP.
Of the annual growth.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if we lock down for a month, then as I say, so we'll probably be around the zero for the whole year. But if we lock down for 2 months, then we're going into 2, 4, 6, 8 or more percent. That's really the only indication I can give at this stage.
Okay, thank you for that. That's also quite important, the scenario analysis. However, I have a question because economists do discuss whether we have a V-shaped recession or rather a U-shaped or even L-shaped recession right now. So what are your perspectives when we lift the lockdown from the economy? Will it rebound? Or the inertia of the crisis will remain there? What is your view about that one?
I think at this stage we're still in the V scenario. I think we still have about probably about 2-3 weeks where we can still say we're in the V scenario. But after that we go into the U scenario. God forbid we go into the L scenario. And I half jokingly say that I'm not certain we're using the right alphabet. I think we could be should be using Arabic or something like that, because I think this recession is totally different to every other recession, and so coming out of the recession will also be probably totally different.
Most likely Arabic, not Chinese. Okay. If we talk about the economy, it of course translates into taxes and tax incomes. Of course, the shield that the government proposed reduces the current incomes in taxation, but also what do we see in the economy is that there is an increase in the shadow economy. So a lot of enterprises that cannot work or don't want to hire on a legal basis then turn into the shadow economy. What do you think? Will we have an increase in the VAT gap this year? And if yes, then by how much?
Well, I think it's very difficult to judge, because in some cases I think the grey economy will disappear for various reasons. One practical reason is we all see in shops that we accept payment by card only, which means that a lot of cash is moved to other places, so that will shut down a part of this grey economy. Other parts which will open up the grey economy, I think, well, unfortunately we're going to go into a high level of unemployment, which means that it will turn back from an employee's market to an employer's market, and that is conducive to a grey economy, unfortunately. But again, I think people are beginning to realise if they're in the real economy, then in times like this, where they're registered, then they can get help from government. Because the economy, it's very difficult. Whether you're an employer or employee, it's very difficult then to come to the government and say, this is my turnover, this is how much I need help. Because you've been in a grey economy, it hasn't been registered. So I think some of these issues will actually cause people to think twice about whether it's good to be in the grey economy. But you're quite right, the grey economy always, in times of instability as we have now, will rise its head. Hopefully the new mechanisms, we're moving very, very quickly into the digital age, and I think this pandemic it's going to be a massive step change for civilization. My own example here in the Ministry of Finance, I have 3,000 employees and 99% of them are working from home. So why in a month's time would I want to get everybody to come back and work in the building? So will we not be talking more about working from home, spending more time with your family, your children, and working from there? Everything that we will be doing is going to be more and more digital, which is more traceable, and that will also have an effect on the grey economy. We, as the ministry, of course, we've put through in the last package 2 weeks ago that you are now e-receipts are allowed. So when you go to a shop, you can be able to ask for an e-receipt instead of a paper receipt, which have some sort of influence on the economy in shops. The JPK, the audit file for VAT, although we have delayed the implementation of that, that will be coming in. That again is a very good instrument to stop some of the grey economy. So I think lots and lots of new digital instruments which will and using artificial intelligence on the data that we're getting, because more and more of the cash registers are electronic online, so we're getting the information here in the ministry together. So with that data, putting on artificial intelligence, we'll be able to see what's not normal.
Thank you for that, but still I would like a little bit to stay with to digital payments. You have a lot of data right now due to the whole VIT gap plugging process. You have a lot of data on banking accounts, on also cashless payments. And do you see that there is an increase in the amount of payments right now in March done by credit cards, online payments? How do you assess that? By how much this part of the economy increased, let's say, the digital part of the economy? Because that's a very important thing if you look at what's happening in the real economy, because some of the payments went from offline to online, also offline commerce to e-commerce. So it's very important to know what is happening in the digital payments department.
Yes, you're quite right, and the answer is it's totally impossible to know at this stage because we have very conflicting issues at the same time. Firstly, there was a run on cash at the very beginning of the epidemic or pandemic. People didn't realize that we have sufficient cash in the banking system in Poland. So they went to banks, they withdrew cash from ATMs. So there's a lot of cash. Within about 2 or 3 days, there was about 10 to 15 billion zloty pumped in cash. So we very quickly moved from 250 to 260 odd billion zloty in cash notes. So there's a lot of cash floating. At the same time, people made a lot of purchases in shops. They're hoarding toilet paper and spaghetti and rice, etc. So the shops were having a boom at the time. So it's very difficult to, and then a week later, suddenly the lockdown came and the spending stopped. So it's very difficult to take out any sensible information from the amount of payments being made by card, the amount of payments being made by cash. Only anecdotal, as we all legally or illegally walk the streets nowadays, when we see on more and more shops, we accept payments non-cash only. So hopefully that will have a long-term effect.
Okay, that's one of our questions that we got from the audience. Do you consider imposing a regulation that allows such kind of payments in Poland? So no cash payments accepted. So, of course, only cashless payments accepted. Yeah. Okay. So that kind of regulation, because each shop right now in Poland should accept cash. They do not have the possibility.
That's right. Actually, the converse is true. We actually have a legal act ready to put through in more normal times, because it's less important at this stage, which actually regulates the acceptance of cash in Poland. Because actually there is no law in Poland that says that you have to accept cash and the denomination. So in theory, if you have to pay for something, you can go to a shop with a kilo or 10 kilos of coins, and the shop has to accept that. So we need to regulate that to make sure that the shopkeepers have to accept cash, but they only accept cash in the appropriate denominations to make sure that people don't use the right thing. So the only aspect that we're looking at to regulate is one that cash has to be accepted in shops, obviously not in vending machines, etc. So there are exceptions. And the other is that shopkeepers also accept non-cash payments. Now, I'm not saying cards because it's not about cards, it's about electronic payments, because I think now people are going to be much more aware that they don't necessarily want to touch that cash. They don't want to have the physical contact. They want to make payments electronically now, whether it's card, whether it's paid by card, by telephone, etc. It's the choice. It will be the choice of the shopkeeper. And the market practice will develop where shopkeepers will accept cards or BLIK payments or any other type of telephone payments.
Okay. No, that were the warming up questions. Now let's come to the difficult stuff. How do you assess the deficit, the public deficit, general government deficit in Poland this year? What will it be? Will we fulfill the Maastricht criteria or not?
I'm not certain that anybody expects, and I'm not talking about Poland, I'm talking about Europe at this stage, and probably the rest of anybody expects us, any country, to be within the 3% guidelines. Firstly, we've been very, very fortunate in that we did plan, and we currently have still, for the record, a budget which is a zero deficit plan. So that gives us a 3% leeway anyway. So whether we need to now, what the eventual budget deficit will be, time will tell. We're fortunate enough that we don't have to put in an amended budget at this stage, because as I said that we've got a zero budget deficit at this stage, but the special act that came through 2 weeks ago allowed the Premier to move payments from various positions in the budget to other positions, so we can actually move money within the budget, so we can stop some costs and increase others. So at this moment in time, we're okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but do I get it correct? You do not need to amend the budget this year?
No, I didn't say this year. I'm saying today.
Today, okay. So when do you plan to amend the budget then?
Well, when we can go and move away from astrology into economic forecasting, because at the moment the Minister of Finance forecast is based on astrology.
Okay, so when do you think that we can move away from astrology?
Well, sorry for answering a question with another question, is when we know what's happening with the pandemic. When we see that the number of infections are starting to level out, that we're beginning to see the end of the pandemic, then we can start taking reasonable decisions about the state of the economy, how long we've been in the lockdown, which will give us guidance how long it will take us to get out of the lockdown, and that will give us some base figures forecast for creating a forecast on what the budget should look like for the rest of the year, because we have a totally different reality. So it's not only managing the day-to-day, but after lockdown, we have to pump a lot of money back into the economy to kickstart it, so get investments, get the liquidity down. So the last thing we'll be looking at is to make sure it's a zero budget deficit, and we'll be looking at to go to the 3%, if not higher, because I don't think anybody would be looking at the 3% as a ceiling anymore. I don't think that's a requirement for this year at all.
Okay, but I agree totally with what you are saying about the conditions, and that we really do not know what will be happening in the next couple of weeks, even in the economy. But still, legal regulations in Poland are something that you need to obey, and you cannot amend a budget within 2 weeks. So you are in November and say, okay, now we have all the data about the coronavirus pandemic, and we know what's happening in the economy, and we can amend the budget. You need to start amending the budget somewhere in June to have it accepted before year's end, really. So that's why why I'm asking about this.
Yeah, sure, absolutely right. We need to, but in June, the more time we have to amend the budget, the more sensible the base figures are. Now, at the moment, we're in territory which we just don't know where we are. But after 2 months, when you're in territory where you don't know where you are, you start getting some sort of feel of what's happening. So I think there's no rush to actually change amend the budget today, because the liquidity's there, and we have the mechanism there to actually move positions within the budget. You're probably right. The time to start looking at the amendment to amend the budget will be June, July, and then if we're still in the middle of a pandemic, then we totally different purpose for amending the budget. But if we see we're coming out of the pandemic at that stage, then it'll be totally different purpose to change the budget. One will be to pump more cash into the economy and and get investments going to kickstart the economy. But if we're still in the lockdown, then obviously the health will be the most important issue at that stage, and all the possible funding that we can pump into the health sector and the health of the Polish people, that will be the priority at that stage.
Okay, you are speaking about pumping money into the health sector. Do you plan to increase spending for healthcare right now? Because in the anti-pandemia shield, there was a 7.5 billion zlotys of additional funding for the healthcare sector. Do you work on increasing that at this moment?
I think as we've all been on record, been put on record that the original anti-crisis act was just the first step. We pushed it through very, very quickly, basically because of calendar reasons. Because obviously we needed to pump a lot of money into the micro companies because they had a small limited flexibility, for financial flexibility, but also we were getting close to the end of March, and a lot of putting your tax returns and paying tax and financial reporting was coming in, so we had to push that through very, very quickly. There wasn't the final word, and yesterday we had yet another interaction of the anti-crisis act, and there'll be more as we're working. So as you say, 7.5 billion zloty was put into is forecast to be input into the health sector, but I'm sure more will be put in as we go forward, and we know what we have to be doing. Is it still to fight with the pandemic, or is it really to develop the health service to increase our security in the future?
Thank you. Let's get back for a second to deficit. Of course, we do not know by how much the deficit will increase in Poland, but still, let's make some assumptions and scenario building. If the growth rate in Poland will be, on average, in 2020, 0, so no recession, but also no growth, what do you expect the deficit will be in such kind of a scenario of a stagnation?
Well, really, again, we go to, are we in the U scenario, have we gone into the L scenario? Because at some stage we're going to have to pump a lot of money into the economy to kickstart it, so that we're talking about investments. Now, investments, sometimes you need to pump in money very, very quickly, so that will come into this year's budget and affect this year's deficit. Some will be will next year and the year after. So it's very difficult to say at this stage what the deficit will be. Again, the deficit, we've been fortunate in the last 4 or 5 years. We've reduced the deficit, public debt, by about 8 percentage points. So we're down about 44% at this stage. So we have 16% before we hit the constitutional limit, and that's a significant amount of money which can be put in. So I don't think we need to worry about at this stage of hitting the constitutional limit.
That was my next question. Thank you for answering that. But still, I would like to do some basic math. which is very important. We got around 70 billion zlotys of spending within the Anti-Crisis Act. Then we have also a drop in incomes. We do not know by how much, but still we can expect that that will be 30-50 billion zlotys of less incomes in the budget. Then we do not have the private pension funds change at this moment, which also will reduce the incomes of the government, general government this year. All in all, you get of, let's say, over 100 billion zlotys of, additional deficit on top of the deficit that we already planned for this year. So 100 billion, am I right? That's something about 5% of GDP over 100 billion. So we go from 0.5% of GDP for the general government to above 5% of GDP for the deficit. Am I right? So that most likely the deficit will be higher than 5%, not higher than 3%, but higher than 5%.
Okay, but that's an arithmetical sum made where nothing else comes in. It's just we just added up the cost. But remember, we have nearly 70 billion zloty in reserves at the moment. So got to count that comes in. Also, I think the tax. Remember that some of the tax it's not being paid at the moment, but it's just deferred. So money will be coming in, and some of the funding doesn't necessarily have to come out of the budget. There are other aspects. Funding from the markets, and also we're still waiting to see what
from the European Union.
Well, we're actually in the middle of the Euro Group meeting at the moment. After 16 hours, it stopped yesterday morning, and it restarts this evening at 5 p.m. So, ministers of finance have got some work to do this week, and so there will be funding coming from the EU as well. So I'm still confident that there won't be any serious serious problem with the deficit.
Okay, because something that is worrying corporations in Poland, especially those multinational ones that are listening to us at this moment, is the idea of introducing new taxes. So when the crisis ends, hopefully it ends very quickly, then the government will need additional funding to reduce the deficit, so that in 2021 we do not cross the constitutional threshold of 60% of debt to GDP. Do you plan to introduce any additional taxes? What about the sugar tax? What about the tax on multinational companies? What about the digital tax? Again, that is the top of the list, but I could, speak a lot.
Okay. Well, at the moment, the sugar tax is coming in as planned, so there's no change there. We have
as planned. We are talking about beginning of June.
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't implemented, or we won't implement the retail sales tax. That's been moved to next year, and there's no discussion at the moment of bringing in any other taxes domestically. However, Poland is agitating, I think, on the European arena to make sure that we start bringing in digital tax as quickly as possible, because, especially as I mentioned, we're going into more and more the digital society, digital economy. So more and more of our services will be purchased through the internet. So I think it's very, very unfair on companies which are registered in Poland and pay their taxes in Poland to compete with companies who are registered outside of Poland but do business in Poland and take money out. So I think very, very important for not only the Polish economy but all economies in Europe to make sure that digital tax does come in, and so that everybody pays their fair share of taxes to build the economy. And at the same time, Poland also has a strong voice in Europe to liquidate tax havens. I think this is also, and it's a request to all our listeners, especially from the multinational. And the majority of the companies, multinational companies in Poland, are playing very, very fair. They employ in Poland, legally employed. They pay their taxes here, and they're very welcome, great companies. But there are companies who actually don't play fairly and transfer their taxes to tax havens. And I think that we have to come down on them very, very heavily. And in fact, yesterday the Premier did announce with a new package that the Polish Development Fund, it will be available for companies which are paying their taxes in Poland. And I think this is something which we'll be hearing more and more often and be much louder. We'll be pointing fingers at companies which transfer taxes out of Poland into tax havens.
Okay, so no new taxes on the table within the ministry?
No new taxes on the table or under the table.
Okay, so please do not surprise us, tell us before. But still, if you are talking about where to find money to finance the shield and to reduce the deficit, what about cuts in other segments of government spending? For example, spending on defense. We know that we have to rule that we should spend on defense 2.1% of GDP this year, as the GDP forecast is very grim and we need to amend the budget. Do you expect to cut the expenses on the defense part of the government spending this year?
No plans at the moment to do any cuts, except for one, and that's where we actually put through in the legal act that's actually being processed at the moment through Parliament, is that to look at the administration. We can't allow for the lockdown, the damage it's causing to the economy, the damage it's causing to companies, to allow the administration to continue business as usual. So we will be looking at the administration, we'll be looking at ourselves to see are the costs that we're incurring fair in the new reality. So that's the only change at this stage. Of course, we'll be looking at all costs to see if some of the investments, which there's a lot of different investments at the moment being planned, how many of those can we move to public-private investments? So that's not so much that we want to stop the investment, it's to see if we can fund them in a different way.
Let's evaluate a little bit on the cost of administration, the cuts that you plan, because the administration is one of the biggest purchasers of goods, especially from business support services, which are quite hardly hit by the current crisis. So if I hear from the Minister of Finance, okay, we are looking for place to cut the costs within the administration, then on the other side I hear a clerk or another director at a ministry or public agency says, okay, let's cut down all the expenses on external companies, so cut down all the expenses that administration have on, for example, private business services, which in times of pandemia is not something that I would like to hear from the administration at this moment.
No. I'm only talking about administration costs of how many people we employ. And
so you plan layoffs?
But if there's going to be 10% or more unemployment in Poland, if we continue, why should that be just in the private sector? I think it will be very, very unfair on society if the private sector takes such a big hit and administration continues as it was. So I think we've got to face reality. I think the administration will also have to take its fair share of its cost. Now, at the same time, I come from business, and in business, in these times, you cut the services you do it yourselves, and you outsource. So I think that's actually good news for the market, that I would expect the administration will actually push out a lot of the services it does itself into the market, and more opportunities for the private sector.
Okay, thank you for that. I would like our listeners to ask questions on the Q&A. You have still the ability. We got just 2 questions. The first one, this event is in English or Polish. That's, I think, my fault from the beginning. Okay, but I have plenty of questions that they came to us from the companies that wanted to listen to our discussion. So feel free to ask new questions, but let's go on with those that I have already. So the first one, and I think a very important one, because a lot of countries are already planning the exit strategy. What is the government's exit strategy? Do we have an exit strategy right now for the whole economy? You told us about additional funding and investment that will help the economy to rebound after the lockdown is lifted. But could you evaluate a little bit on the exit strategy? Also, for example, about withdrawing liquidity from the market?
I think it's too early to talk about an exit strategy at the moment. It's in detail. Obviously, we are looking at various strategies, but again, it all depends on how long we're in this crisis. Because if the crisis finishes within a week or 2, then the exit strategy will be totally different to if we're going to a U scenario and, God forbid, an L scenario. So it's too early to talk about a strategy. Obviously, we are looking at various options and what we should be doing and analysing.
Okay, thank you. So if you do not have, I won't stick to that. I have a question regarding what you were talking about a couple of minutes ago, so that the Eurogroup is right now working. What is the Polish position on the amendment of ESM criteria that Dutch put forward recently? So to use ESM funds to help mitigate the effects of the corona crisis.
Well, the ESM is more on the euro side, so it's really a fight between the countries of the north with the countries of the south. The Dutch are basically very, very worried that it's just really a mechanism to lower the cost of borrowing by the Italians, by the countries of south of southern Europe. So we're actually standing by the side, and hopefully that very quickly they can get to some sort of consensus, which will give the okay to the whole package. Because at the moment, the whole package is basically relies on all the ministers of finance agreeing on all the aspects, which hopefully tonight we'll be able to agree, and that will give the green light for the whole package to go forward, and the European Investment Bank to kick in with its funding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We got still plenty of questions about the changes to taxation. As I remember right, you told us already that the retail tax will start in 2021 at earliest. So this year there won't be any retail tax introduced. But there is a question about the banking tax, as the banks have a great role to play in helping private companies to get through this crisis. Does the ministry analyzes whether they can change the construction of the asset tax for banks?
Yes, absolutely. We're looking at that. It's part of our dialogue with business, and the banks have actually brought this up a number of times to reduce the tax, we are looking at this. There's no discussion about liquidating that tax, cancelling it, but we are looking at whether we should help the banks and help the economy by not including new credits to be under the banking tax. So that it is under review. We are discussing that, but no decision has been made at this stage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there are also plenty of questions that I get today and before about the cooperation between the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank of Poland, especially regarding the Polish quantitative easing that the National Bank of Poland is doing. It's a little bit different than the quantitative easing of the ECB or the Fed they introduced before. Are you in close contact in designing which kind of debt the National Bank of Poland is buying, or is it all for the National Bank of Poland to decide what they are buying, how they are buying, or you cooperate on that?
Firstly, the National Bank can't fund public debt, so I think that was quite clearly stated yesterday by the Chief Executive, Mr. Kościński. However, we are all working together as one team. That's absolutely true. The Ministry of Finance, the National Bank of Poland, the Financial Supervisory Authority, also Polish Development Fund. We are working together to make sure that we get out of this crisis as quickly and as cheaply, I don't know the word, but as least cost as possible. I think that the mechanisms brought in, like yesterday, the funding for the 100 billion zloty for the Polish Development Fund, where they issue bonds which are bought in the market by banks, and then the National Bank of Poland can go in and then purchase them in the secondary market. I think these are the type of things where, you know, we aren't talking together, we understand each other, but there's no discussion about that we tell someone else that they must do something. It's everybody has their own perspective and own sovereign decisions.
So it's a mutual understanding more than a close cooperation. We will issue that kind of bonds, please buy them on the secondary market next week. So there is not that kind of discussion.
It's not please buy them. It's is it possible to buy them discussion.
Okay. When we are about financing the deficit, how do you expect, by how much will the gross financial needs of the government increase this year? So how much more money do we need to get from the market this year? Of course, National Bank of Poland is helping, but still private investors are very interested in how much more bonds there will be issued this year by the Ministry of Finance. Could you give us some numbers, or just the bottom of the increase? So like with the deficit 5% or more, here is 50 billion zlotys or more, or 100 billion zlotys or more?
Again, it's very, very difficult to discuss that or to judge that. We're going into, again, economic forecasting, so astrology is just as useful at this stage. First of all, we're very fortunate in that most of our debt is now domestic, so as a government public debt. So we don't have to rely on international markets. We already have over 90%, 92%, if I remember rightly, of our funding requirements for this year under the current budget already satisfied, so that we're already in a relatively comfortable position there. Now, when it comes to new funding, there's various mechanisms. It doesn't have to be, as I say, government debt. It can be a debt which is guaranteed by government, so it doesn't come into our deficits. It can be managed different ways. So it's too early to say how much the funding requirements from the government will be for this year.
Okay, so again, astrology. Now let's turn a little bit to analysis of different sectors of the economy, because the anti-crisis shield puts forward some, across-the-board measures. So for medium-sized enterprises, for micro-enterprises, large enterprises, but are there in the pipeline any regulations that will help some specific, mostly affected parts of the business in Poland, for example, the HoReCa sector or recreational sector? So do you plan to go within some sectoral changes, some sectoral plans to mitigate the effects of the corona crisis?
Well, this is more the territory which the Ministry of Development manages for where sectors, and they have come up with various proposals, perhaps of giving 1,000 zloty bonds, or tokens to people to use in the HoReCa sector in Poland, etc. But as the pandemic continues, every part of the economy will be affected, and not just in Poland. Our economies are all intertwined in Europe, so that we have to look at we have to take a helicopter view and take a much larger view. I suspect that in 2 months' time we won't be talking about just HoReCa. We'll be talking about the events sectors and every other sector at that stage as well. So I think it's really a case of pouring money into the economy and getting more and more investments going, rather than targeting specific sectors. Of course, we very much welcome sectors to come to us and give us ideas. It's something which both the Ministry of Development and the Ministry of Finance, we work very, very closely together. But I think the most important is that we work very closely with the markets. And we do encourage the market to interact with us. We both our ministries have on our portals a specific functionality for the markets to tell us what they think we should be doing on our portal. It's more on the fiscal aspects, and on the portal of the Ministry of Development is more on the economic. And so anybody who's kind of good ideas of how to help their sectors, please tell us, and we're delighted to interact and implement as quickly as possible.
Of course, as I cannot ask all the questions that we get, I promise you, Minister, that I will just put it into one file and send it to the ministry. So you see all the questions that companies and different organizations of companies are struggling with right now to get an answer for. So there are plenty of very specific questions here, also legal questions. But I would like, still, when we are talking about different sectors, I would like to bring one sector that is also under the regulation of the Ministry of Finance, and it is the housing market. And I'm not talking about the rental market itself, but I'm talking about a bill on real estate investment trusts. That was a bill that was designed by the Ministry of Finance a couple of years ago. Then it went to the Parliament, and right now it might be a very good vehicle to help to buy a surplus of houses that try to be sold in the market. For example, due to the crisis in short-term rental, we have a large drop, almost to 0% of the market in the Airbnb and short-term rental sector at this moment, and a lot of short-term investors selling their houses. And one of the tools that might help to mitigate the problem is introducing a real estate investment trust that would buy them in times of crisis, and then let's say try to help this part of the market to overcome the crisis without any heavy drop in the prices of real estate in Poland at this moment. Do you plan to work on the right bill?
Okay, first, before I answer that question, I'll just go back to your previous, that you're going to send me a million questions. I do. Please do. It's great that the more of questions we get, the more we know what the market requires. And I do request that everybody goes onto our website and looks at the functionality of Głos Podatnika, where you can register your questions. We then look at them and either give you a reply or implement the requirements, etc. Now, going on to the housing market, yes, it's the rates, the real estate investment trusts are being looked at. That again is in the domain of the Ministry of Development, but we are working very, very closely with them, and hopefully that will come into force very, very quickly. However, I think there's a very big question mark on the housing market in Poland coming out of the crisis, because with so many people possibly unemployed, with the tourist industry probably being clamped down for a long, long time, the international tourist business, there could be a serious problem in the housing market, which we will have to somehow help.
Okay. Now to some legal changes that the Ministry of Finance might adopt. So what about the split payment? Do you plan to suspend the split payment obligation for some industries at this moment or not? That might help to increase the liquidity of companies.
No, well, there's no plans at this stage to suspend that, because I remind everybody that the funds on the split payment account can be used for other purposes. They're not just frozen on the account. They can be used for making payments in the to other companies for tax purposes, or to the inland revenue, or for social security payments. So that the money isn't frozen and can't be used.
Okay, thank you. I have a question here. I will read it to you. Is it considered to suspend the current regulation on payment gridlocks, especially administrative penalties for payment gridlocks?
No, I suspect the converse will be true at this stage. We'll be looking at who's causing the gridlocks, and I suspect the UOKiK will be taking this aspect very, very seriously, that who's creating the gridlocks to try to, because that will cause a lot of damage, especially to the small companies. That makes no sense if we're trying to pump liquidity, especially into the small companies, and they're being caught in gridlocks. So I think some serious work will be done there.
Okay, still, do the ministry plan to delay VAT refunds or prolong these, or any other measures planned with this regard? So, what about that? About the VAT payments and VAT refunds? Any changes in the pipeline?
No, it's the only changes are hopefully are positive changes. We're looking at the VAT refunds. In January, I think statistically it took about 60 days for the refund to come through. In February, I think we've come down to 20 odd days, and we're working very, very hard to increase that. Now, some repayments, obviously, they can't be automatic. We have to check them. Otherwise, we'll be opening up again our economy to the carousels, the mafia.
Okay, yeah. In times of increasing the grey economy, it might be hit back to government, which will lower payments. I agree with you on that. Do you plan to give up the tax on commercially leased buildings, especially with respect to shopping galleries? That's another question that I get instantly right now.
No, we're not planning to stop that tax.
Okay. So I have plenty of questions regarding, do you plan to stop that tax? Maybe I'll just bundle them. Do you plan to suspend some taxes for different kinds of businesses in Poland right now? So the sectoral taxes that are affecting business activity in different sectors. Do you work on some several taxes of them? So just to bundle all the questions that I get.
Okay, we are again. This is where I request that the market does come to us and register on our portal. Where VAT is a good example of VAT imports. Of various medical products, we've zeroed off the VAT on that. So it's really a case by case situation at the moment. I don't think there's at the end of the day, we need to have tax being paid, because we need to continue to have the economy working, and we need to pay policemen, we need to pay teachers, etc. So taxes have to be paid. So we can't stop paying tax for everybody. We can defer the tax for a month or two, but there is a limit how much we can defer that. So let's not expect that we stop paying taxes like some people would like, that we stop paying taxes for a year or so, but we won't have an economy to come back to afterwards.
Clear, and the National Bank of Poland cannot fund all of the activity of the government in this moment. One last question, a general one, because it's quite new, and we have yesterday seen Anti-Crisis Shield 2.0 presented by the Prime Minister together with the President of National Bank of Poland and also Paweł Borys from Polski Fundusz Rozwoju. How do you assess that one? What will be the impact on the public deficit of this 100 billion of credits to private companies? Because it will be postponed most likely, the impact on the public deficit, but most likely there will be some. How do you assess this program and their effect on public finance?
Well, first of all, I think the program is very, very good, and I had a number of telephone calls yesterday evening from both banks and from companies saying this is what they've been waiting for. So I think as an instrument, I think it's very, very good. Now, note that I wasn't at the conference because it doesn't actually affect the Ministry of Finance directly at this stage. The bonds will be issued by the Polish Development Fund. We'll be just guaranteeing, so it won't affect the balance of won't affect the deficit for this year. It's a guarantee. Obviously, in a number of years' time, when it comes to maturity, that's when we'll be affecting the deficit. So it's not at this stage.
Okay, so in the future, but still you do expect that will have an impact on public deficit when it comes to repay those credits in the 3 years or 2 years time?
Of course, yes, it will then. But then hopefully we will be out of the crisis will be long forgotten. We'll be back into the 4-5% GDP growth, and everybody will be happy to pay their taxes, and we can then cover the investment, because it is an investment that we're doing today.
Okay, yeah, we are doing an investment that I totally agree on. When can we expect, because I'm quite sure that there will be some, an anti-crisis shield 3.0, because for sure the Ministry of Development, the Ministry of Finance, the Polish Development Fund, they are all working together on drafting additional bills that can help the Polish entrepreneurs. When can we expect another bill? What do you think about that?
I don't think we call them 1.0, 2.0, 3.0.
We do.
We call them the shield, and it's getting wider and deeper, the shield. There's no limit. We're not putting a limit that there's going to be 2 or 3 versions or 4 or 5, as many as is required by the economy. And as we go through the various phases of the crisis, then we have to bring in the new instruments. If in 2 weeks' time we'll be coming out of the crisis, then expect a shield which will help push companies to help them to expand and get out of the crisis. But if we're going to a U, then we have to have a different approach. So expect quite regular acts of legal acts to help the economy. I think what's happening at the moment is quite good. That very quick and concise acts are being put through, rather than waiting sort of 3, 4, 5 weeks to put in all the legal requirements. I think much better to actually cut them into short acts and put them through very, very quickly. So expect every few weeks, every 2 to 3 weeks, a new legal act which will implement something new for the businesses.
Okay, 2-3 weeks. And if you might guess, you can use your astrology department. What will be in the next act? So which parts of the economy, which part of the institutional surrounding of the economy needs to be amended right now? So what can we expect?
Well, I think we can expect always three aspects, at least 3 legs. One leg will be to to correct something we've already implemented, and market practice is showing that there's a problem. So
okay, what might that be? Sorry to interrupt. What might that be? What is the market showing already that's not working that well as you planned?
Okay, this is anecdotal, but my understanding is that to get some of the benefits, you had to actually bring in paper documents. We had to, so these are the type of things which, because of the speed of implementing some of these changes, we suddenly realised that we didn't allow for people that had paper documents, and they had to come into the tax office where the tax office is closed, and we don't want people in the streets. So these are the type of things that we have to do there. As can be noted, that as we go further into the crisis, we have to help the bigger companies as well. So the first shield, the beginning, was really to, as quickly as possible, pump money into the micro companies and the small companies. Now, yesterday's shield was more also for the medium and for the large companies. So I think that you can also always expect the leg for what we can help for the medium and larger, and larger companies. And a third is really it's looking forward. As we go through the crisis, is which areas should we be helping more? So I think more and more will be on the investment side, and creating investment funds and putting money into these investment funds. And as I said, we'll be looking at the various projects that the administration is planning to do, which are at the moment in the budget as financed by the budget. Can we move some of those projects to be financed by a public-private partnership? And these will probably be in the next type of legal acts.
Okay, thank you. If you were talking about corrections to the first anti-crisis shield, there were plenty of voices within from entrepreneurs, most likely, that said that the program that was designed to help them retain jobs within companies, so this 40-40-20 act that will make the government to pay 40% of the wage to the employee, 40% by the employer, and 20% that will be the reduction in the working hours of the employee, and also respectively its wage. Can you see already how many companies do use this instrument to help to co-finance from the government their wage fund at this moment? If yes, how many funds they were used, how many companies they are using them?
Again, that's a question really more for the Ministry of Development and for the Ministry of Family and Social Planning, because it's not a tax, it's social security. From my understanding, there's over 300,000 companies already applied, which I think is on the one side, one hand, it's a good figure. There's so many, but on the other hand, it just shows the type of crisis we're going through. So it's sad. From my point of view, if I saw correctly yesterday, we have over 14,000 companies which have applied to have tax delayed or deferred rather, and things like that. So that's shot up quite dramatically. But not as big as yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, as I still got plenty of questions about changes in taxation and who will be taxed next, and that's a little bit of worrisome that the business is asking who will be taxed next and not who will be helped next.
Okay, well, I'll take this opportunity that it's interesting. It's one of my, despite this crisis, it's still top of my agenda. We are trying to change the way the Ministry of Finance works. We're trying to make sure that all of my 3,000 employees within the Ministry of Finance and 63,000 employees in the whole of inland revenue that we have in Poland understand that we are working for the economy, for the people. And taxes, it's not the Ministry of Finance, it takes taxes, it's the people, the taxpayers are giving their money to us for us to invest on their behalf in the Polish economy. And this is where I've got a lot of work to do to get the mentality of the employees changed, but also to make sure that the market understands that by paying taxes in Poland, we're going to have better roads, better hospitals, better schools, better everything. So the taxes are a good thing, not a bad thing. In Poland, we seem to think that paying taxes is a horrible thing. It's a crime. It's not. It's good. It's an investment.
There is a very good idea, I think. However, of course, very hard to implement. But one of our listeners of this conversation asked whether the Ministry of Finance could introduce an excise roadmap for a few years perspective, so how the excise in the tobacco industry will change. But I think that's a good idea in general, to introduce a tax roadmap of what taxes will be introduced in the future. I know that at the current situation, when the uncertainty is the highest in a couple of years or even a couple of decades, but again, that's what is the most important thing right now. So to plan the business not in the short term, which is of course very important, but in the long term. So especially in times of such uncertainty, for private companies, it would be of great use to have a roadmap, and so they can see when designing their future budgets how much tax they need to pay.
You're absolutely right. It's part of what I said to transform the way the ministry and the revenue works in Poland. That we're for we work on behalf of our taxpayers, and most of my colleagues here in the ministry, we come from business. We understand that predictability is what's required, transparency, accountability. These are the type of things which I'm trying to implement here. That we don't change taxes. Obviously, we're in a crisis environment at the moment, and we have to work onto that. But under normal circumstances, where we have we will put in a planned change to taxes, one change maximum per year, so that everybody can per type of tax, is it VAT or corporate or excise or any other tax, so that everybody can plan. Because I absolutely do understand the problems that companies have if we change the tax environment at the end of the year, where they've already put in their business plans to head offices in May, and we change everything in November. Then it creates serious problems for managing the companies. And hopefully we can limit that to absolutely to limit them to, so that it doesn't happen as it used to happen.
And the same spirit, another question about the fundamental tax reform. There is a question that does the Ministry of Finance plan to continue on the fundamental tax reform? I understand this question in that way that it is asked whether you plan to change the VAT tax system and to introduce the changes in the VAT rates that you postponed due to the coronavirus crisis.
Okay, because I understand the question more about whether we'll reform the tax in Poland, not the VAT, but basically the tax.
The whole tax system. Okay, so answer both questions.
I think yes. I think this is part of it's just changing one part, so that we in the ministry work for our taxpayers. Is not enough. We've got to change ourselves. We've also got to change the way the taxpayer looks at us. Because that will also shut down on the grey economy. At the moment in Poland, if someone doesn't pay taxes, he evades taxes. People think, oh, he's a clever guy. He's managed to outwit the way the administration works. Whereas I would like to have taxpayers think, well, that person who's evading tax is actually stealing from everybody. A totally different. And also, we need to change the way taxes are applied. So I think we have three legs there to change. So we have to change ourselves. We have to make sure that the taxpayers are aware of what taxes are and why they're being paid. And we have to change the instrument. We have to modernise the instrument. That the instrument is treat everybody as fair, because at the moment I get the feeling that most tax laws treat everybody as being a potential tax evader, if not avoider. But we should be treating that everybody is absolutely honest and working honest, and exceptions are the problem, not the other way around. So we do need to change the fundamentals of the tax laws. Yes.
Okay, maybe this is the right moment to do it, as we change a lot of laws. Maybe right now it's the right moment to redesign the tax system as the economy again kicks off. We'll go into the new economic order with a new, better, I hope, tax system.
Absolutely, and because we started this transformation already a few months back, we're already seeing the benefits now, because when companies are applying for the tax deferral because of the coronavirus, already that we have instructions going out to the tax offices that to limit the amount of work and documentation being provided by the taxpayer to get the tax deferred, so that they don't have to produce a load of documents. They just have to produce a statement that they have a problem. That's enough. So already this transparency, this customer friendliness, customer centricity is having its benefits.
Okay, and one last question, because we are finishing. So if our participants would like to ask other questions, that's the last moment to do it. But one last question from me: if you would meet, if we had meet 2-3 weeks ago, before the whole crisis break out, we would discuss heavily on the new Green Deal and green bonds of the Ministry of Finance. I know that the priorities right now did change a lot, but is the Ministry of Finance still working on implementing the new Green Deal in Poland? How might it affect the Polish economy and the public finance? And also, does the ministry plan to issue new green bonds, as we were one of the worst countries in the world that issued green bonds, and we're just quite good at it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because our perspective is the green bonds. It's the green economy is more for other ministries. So we provide the financing. Green bonds, absolutely. We've been working on them. We still are working on them. But at the moment, it's not the right time to go into the market. Although the international rating companies, I think Fitch upheld its rating on Poland a few weeks ago. We're due to be rated again by Standard & Poor on Friday or tomorrow evening, and hopefully we have a good rating there. So I think from that aspect it's good. But international financial markets are now they're not buying bonds. The markets are a little bit dry. So let's wait a while. But from our perspective, yes, green bonds absolutely are on our agenda. In fact, top of our agenda.
Okay, you were talking about investment funds that would help the economy to gain its speed again after the crisis, public investment funds. Do you think that among all those funds that will be designed and their investment plans, there will be a large share of green investment?
Yes, I think so. I think Polish people remember that where we started from. We started from a long way back, so we have a lot when it comes to the environment. So we have a lot to do. But I think the Polish population is expecting us to go in the direction of the green environment. So I think the projects that we're implementing will be green. So lots of opportunities for investment funds to invest in green projects going forward. Absolutely. Okay,
and one last question from our participants. What about software cash registers, when they are going to be implemented?
Okay, at the moment we're going through the notification process, which takes 3 months in the Commission. Hopefully when they come through, we'll be able to implement them. Now we've postponed, I think, by 3 months the requirement of having them, which will help the taxi drivers and the Uber drivers, because there was a conflict, or there is a legal conflict between the Ministry of Infrastructure and Ministry of Digitalization ourselves, because we can't certify the taximeter if we don't have a software, a fiscal register. But hopefully that will come in the summer now. And we also will be looking at expanding. Initially, a very limited sector which will be allowed to use the software fiscal registers, basically just for control purposes. But we hope to open them up very, very quickly. The market is asking us if we can open up for the HoReCa markets, and so we will be, as soon as we're certain that the fiscal registers, software fiscal registers, do perform as we expect them to, then we'll allow other sectors to participate.
Okay, thank you, Minister. But before we end, I would like to ask you whether you would like to say something to our participants, most like entrepreneurs, an announcement to make. I did not ask about.
Okay, well, first of all, for everybody to take this virus very, very seriously, because it's very easy to lose sight of how serious this virus is. With the nice weather coming, with the Easter weekend coming, it is a very, very serious crisis, as nobody really knows. Even the young people who go through the virus very, very easily, we don't know the consequences, what will happen to their health in a few years' time. So do everything possible to avoid the crisis and keep yourself safe. Now, when it comes to the economy, I'm a born optimist. I believe that we'll do very, very well when the crisis starts passing. We're one of the largest countries in Europe, so there's a very, very big domestic market available there. I think there's lots of opportunities will be had. I think a lot of companies will be reassessing their supply chains and moving them away from Asia back to Europe. So I think this is an excellent opportunity for a lot of Polish entrepreneurs to get more business. I keep my fingers crossed that one, on the health, that's the most important. We don't appreciate our health until we start losing it. So we take this virus very, very seriously, and be optimistic that sooner or later, hopefully sooner, the crisis passes and plenty of business opportunities.
Thank you, Minister. I agree with you totally. Keep safe. You too, at the Ministry of Finance. Great to hear that 99% of your workers are working from their homes. That's really, part of the administration we should look up to. So thank you for being the guest at our Q&A. Sorry for asking you so many questions from so many different things, also about astrology. But you are quite good in astrology. So thank you. I would like also to thank you to Cisco company who helped us with establishing this connection today, and so that all of you could join us and listen to us. The whole conversation was recorded, and you can come back to it at YouTube if you joined in the middle of the conversation. And I would like also to invite you already in 1 week's time, at the 15th of April at 9:30, so 1 hour later, we will talk with the CEO of UOKiK, so Tomasz Chrustny, who will be joining us also on an online Q&A meeting, and that meeting will be in Polish. Also on the 21st of April, we'll have a discussion with Maciej Popowski from the European Commission about the situation in Turkey. Last but not least, I would like also to advise you that Polityka Insight would love to help you during the coronavirus crisis. We prepared a corona briefing for your boards. If you are interested in such kind of a service to talk to our analytics onto perspectives, on doing some foresight exercises, what might be happening in the future, some kind of astrology also, please call us and we'll try to arrange a meeting for you. Okay, thank you once again for listening and have a great Eastern time. And again, as the Minister said, keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you.